Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the PokerNews podcast. We are just gently, just the tipping into PokerNews podcast 2.0. We are not officially live yet. We're going to be live next week. We had some personal situations come up. Some of the team had to take off some days this week, and we decided to just wait for the live stream until next week. But we are going to be doing this live every week on Wednesdays. You can pay attention to our social media where we will let you guys know exactly where, and if you want to join in, you want to be a part of the conversation, you just want to heckle us, whatever you want, we will let you know. I am your host, Auntie Chardonnay, Sarah Herring, joined by Chad A. Holloway. Chad is just getting ready to pack a bag per the usual, but this time, Chad, it's not to report, it's to play again.
I am pretty excited. I chatted with our guest this week, Jesse Lonis, who is a big up-and-coming player, and we talked a lot of poker, and he's got a lot of passion, and it kind of rubbed off on me. And on ClubGG, as you and I often do, right? It was getting towards the end of January. I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to play this much more. I know that the satellites might be running out. I don't know. So on Sunday, while watching NFL football, I fired up GG. I had a bunch of stage 1 tickets already won. So I fired a stage 2, which is I think a 9 or 10 man sit and go. Won that into stage 3, which was 105 players. The top 10 got a seat into the RunGood Poker Series main event, and I was one of those 10. I all of a sudden found myself with a seat, except for the event is this weekend. So I'm on United.com, finding a seat using some airline miles, calling up some friends. Are you going to be there? Can I stay with you? Can I crash with you? And ultimately got it all worked out. So yeah, tomorrow, this time tomorrow, I'll be flying to San Diego for the RunGood Poker Series main event at Hamul Casino. I'm pretty excited to see those guys. Boston Rob Mariano from Survivor is out there, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
And we all know that my husband also won a seat to this tournament, and he's just not going. Because that's what happens, Chad, when you have kids, okay? You've got responsibilities. You can take your Sundays off so that you can win the seats, but your wife is never going to let you actually go to the event. So just note to self, note to all of those poker players out there who are also wanting to win seats on ClubGG, maybe just run the shedge by the old lady before you commit too hard. But I am very excited to see how that goes for you. And I'm obviously hoping that you win and that you smoke bomb on PokerNews as a whole, but I'll always stay with the PokerNews podcast, right?
Absolutely. Look, I've won a bracelet when I've been with PokerNews before, and I didn't leave. So I love my job. I love poker. I love working in poker. I love playing poker. I find the best of all worlds is just to continue to do that. And, it was actually one of the topics I talked to the guest Jesse Lonis about how he went from working to transitioning into poker to ultimately moving to Vegas and then having all this success, and how that is kind of changing him. And it's really interesting because he just had a baby not long ago, and he's in his mid-20s. I think he's 26. So we talk all about that. That's an interesting equation to do all that, but still be crushing it and just kind of transitioning into the high-stakes scene for him. So definitely an interesting interview that's coming up later in the show.
Well, for those of us, who are living this dream life in poker, living the high life, Chad's out here going to San Diego. We all know that things do not always go this well in poker. And if you pay attention to any of our social platforms, or really if you've been on PokerNews in the last 4 or 5 days, you will have seen what is probably one of the best tilts I have ever seen. And yeah, Chad, did you guys dig deep into the story? You don't even really need any story, but Chad, what did you guys find out?
Yeah, this clip puts Phil Hellmuth's outburst to shame. So it was a viral clip that was coming out of Japan. There was a poker tournament. There was day 2 of the Japan Gold Dragon, and there was a live stream final table. Players are sat down. There's 9 of them. Dealer, they're all masked up, lots of chips in play, and all of a sudden somebody walks up to the table, grabs it, and attempts to flip it over. Now, he's not able to exactly flip it over, but he gets it high enough, it disrupts everything. The chips go flying, they're scattered all. The players all lean back like, what the hell is going on? Just a wild scene. From what I understand, it wasn't even a player that did this. It was somebody else who was disgruntled about something. Details are a little sketchy, but it sounded like it wasn't even somebody in the poker tournament. So I wonder if it's just a guy who was mad at the casino, if he was mad at somebody in the tournament. I don't know, but you know, the cards, the chips, the cans of Red Bull, they went flying everywhere. It was a pretty crazy scene. Players were just flabbergasted. They didn't know what to do, and rightfully so. And unfortunately, like I said, the details really aren't out there. I would imagine they tried to reconstruct it. It was live streamed, and so in the software, they should have had the player stacks and where the button was and all that. So pretty sure that they were able to pause things and get it right. But you got to watch this clip. It's pretty crazy, and I mean, it's entertaining. It's like, what the hell? But I sure hope it doesn't set like a precedent or inspire anybody else to do it, because it's just a mess. And you know, imagine this happening in like a major WSOP or something. Wouldn't be good.
No, it just takes forever. Can you imagine like having to figure out everyone's situation chip wise and what was going on at the action in the hand? Like, I see you like 3 hours later when you could maybe pull it back together. It really changes the sort of role that the game is on. Like, everything changes. And speaking of everything changing, you know, since this sort of COVID shut down a lot of our live poker, we've all been sort of tiptoeing around how to get back, what to do. And it's interesting. Actually, I have a girlfriend who works for the Encore in Boston Harbor. It's a relatively new hotel casino anyways, and it's gorgeous. And I think that they had some pretty ambitious goals for what their poker room was going to look like out there. Since open with more than 6 tables or something like that, and since they are reopening now officially, it's 10 or less than 10 tables, and it closes at 8 p.m., which is pretty bananas. But that's not even the reason why most people are complaining. That being said, they're complaining, and still the lists are like lines and lines of lists of people waiting to play these games. But our boy Chase Bianchi got on to express displeasure with the Rake, which I have to say is pretty absurd. 10% up to $10. I've never even heard of anything close to that.
Yeah, and it's into the lower stakes games. It's for like 1-2, 1-3, basically all the games 5-10 and lower. It's an extremely high rake. Look, it's outrageous in my opinion. They shouldn't be doing it, but there's such a demand for poker and their supply is limited. They actually have 12 tables is what they reopened with. And there's lists a mile long. The hours of operation are shortened. So there's this huge demand. So players are playing and they're paying this rake. I don't agree that the room should be doing this, but I mean, if you can get it, if players are going to pay for it, you know, I can see why they're doing it and not changing it. It's up to the players to kind of take a stand and say, I'm not paying that crazy rake. I certainly wouldn't. It's just nigh impossible to beat. And, you know, this isn't the first time that the Encore Boston Harbor is kind of experienced some controversy. Back in December, there was some unanswered questions about this bad beat jackpot. There was a huge bad beat jackpot there when COVID hit, and players didn't know what was going to happen with that money, and it seemed like the casino might be taking it or not doing anything with it, which would be very, very scandalous. You know, there just wasn't a lot of clarity. PokerNews did reach out. There was an article from John Soffin back then, and they'd said, you know, we're planning to use that bad beat jackpot funds in some sort of high hand promotion or something so that they would actually redistribute it. So that's all fine. But now here you are, they finally get to reopen at the end of January, and you have this extremely high rake. I know there's, you know, space concerns, there's staffing limitations and all that, but I mean, even still, that seems pretty excessive. We'll have to see if it continues, because it does seem like players like Chase Bianchi, who, you know, does have a platform now that he made the WSOP final table last year, you know, holding them to the fire a little bit. PokerNews did an article about it, and I could tell you the reactions on social media to that article were not positive, to say the least. So we'll have to see if they change their tune. I don't know why they don't add more tables. Sarah, like you said, when they open huge. Whether it's staffing concerns or what have you, I don't know. But look, poker needs to rebound from the pandemic. It has in a lot of parts of the world, but obviously there's a lot of wrinkles to iron out in other parts of the country and other card rooms, and Encore Boston Harbor certainly seems to be one of them.
Well, and it's, it's interesting because even when we talked to Maria Ho a few weeks ago, there are a lot of players, myself included, who just look at poker for the most part as just something fun to do. And we accept that we will probably be losing players in the long run and that we're more or less paying like an entertainment tax or something when we sit down at a poker table. And so maybe, for the most part, they're not really caring or trying to appeal to the audience of poker players who are doing this for a living, and maybe that's kind of why they're just like, whatever, we don't care. If you want to play poker casually, maybe you don't even notice how expensive the rake is or don't know any different, and if you want to play poker professionally, you're like ultimately probably like ruining the poker economy anyways, so like, I don't know. You can make an argument.
There's a lack of options for players in that market too, right? I think the next closest card rooms are in Connecticut at Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun, and that's like a 2.5 hour drive from Boston. So there's nothing really even that close. So players, probably are just like biting the bullet and paying this high rake. I got to imagine though, like the underground poker scene, the home game scene in Boston has got to be pretty juicy and lucrative right now. That's usually the case when players get fed up with the card rooms, be it from high rake, long waiting lists, or what have you. When there's frustration, there's often opportunity. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of those games are going strong.
Yeah, for sure. No, you're definitely right. Well, for those we've already teased a little bit, we've brought this up a couple of times. Chad sat down with Jesse Lonis, who is popping off, who's absolutely on fire right now. And if you guys are listening to this audio-wise, we're going to turn to that interview right now. Or if you are watching this on video, we will put a link to that interview in the description below. So you guys definitely want to check that out. And our guest segment is sponsored by Natural 8. We want to thank our podcast sponsors for the guest segment this week, Natural 8. All right, Chad. Let's talk a little bit. It feels like we basically talk every week about a WSOP circuit event, but let's talk about the Horshoe Tunica.
Yeah, the WSOP circuit wrapped up their stop there, and it was a pretty interesting one because there were some good storylines that came out of there. One of them being that Maurice Hawkins almost won his record-extending 15th gold ring. Now, Maurice Hawkins sits atop the all-time list for most rings won on the circuit with 14. He made it all the way to heads-up play in event number 8, which was a $600 no-limit hold'em black chip bounty event, but ultimately finished second to John Marlowe. So Maurice Hawkins to the circuit, his race is like Phil Hellmuth bracelet race, right? We're always keeping an eye on it. It's always interesting. And Maurice Hawkins, in a lot of ways, is like Phil Hellmuth, very polarizing. Some people really don't like the guy. Some people admire the guy and his skill. I've had a up and down relationship with Maurice Hawkins over the years, but always enjoy seeing him. And he does have a great passion for the game. And I think it's only a matter of time before that 15th ring is his. Also winning at the stop, Preston McEwen, who is rising to fame. He's already pretty well known. He's a RunGood Poker Series guy, has his name out there kind of in the Midwest South region. He ends up getting his first ring by taking down a $400 no-limit hold'em turbo event for $18,000. And then there was Donnie Phan, who is, I can tell you, well known on like the mid-stakes, the RunGood Poker Series, the Mid-States Poker Tour, and the WSOP circuit. He didn't have a ring coming into this stop, and he left with two of them. He won event number 7, the $400 monster stack for $34,000, and then closed it out. Event number 13 was a no-limit hold'em double stack. He won that one for $13,000, so he got 2 rings. The WSOP circuit isn't doing casino championships anymore, but if they did, he certainly would have won it. John Holly won event number 12 for his 7th ring. And then in the main event was the $1,700 buy-in. It attracted 674 runners, and it was one Randy Paguio out of San Diego, taking it down for $193,000 and his second career gold ring. Now, remember, anybody who wins a ring at these WSOP circuit stops qualifies for kind of a year-end championship free roll event. I don't know the details off of that right offhand since the circuit just started, but it is going to take place this summer during the 2022 World Series of Poker in Las Vegas at the Horshoe, which right now is Bally's, but is switching to the Horshoe, I guess. So, yeah.
All right. Well, there's a story that I really can't wait to get to, but I'm going to. You know, I only want to deal with like the really juicy stuff. But we did talk last week about Best Bet Jacksonville kicking off, and they already have a winner in the Winter opening event. Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel Kusnerak. He's expecting a child. You know, we heard from Jesse Lonis not long ago about his baby, and Daniel Kusnerak is expecting one in April. He goes there. Event number one was a $580 no limit hold'em tournament. 740 runners, took it down for $62,000. So that's a nice little, baby shower gift, I guess you could call it. A nice little start there. He's been having some success on the poker circuit lately, and he says he's going to be at the Win Millions in March. Speaking of the Win Millions, Sarah, this would be a good opportunity for me to drop something that I haven't even told you yet. But next week, we're going to have Ryan Beauregard, the director of poker operations from the Win, coming on to the Poker News podcast to talk about the Win Millions. And I personally am going out to Vegas from March 3rd through the 12th. I'm going to be at the Win Millions every single day, doing interviews, doing stories, doing social media. This is a big event. I was there last year, and there was definitely something special about it. So excited to be back and excited to have Ryan Beauregard come on the show and tell all the listeners and all about what they can expect from this year's Win Millions.
Well, I also was kind of excited to see this event on our schedule of things to talk about because I am from Colorado. Of course, I love Blackhawk, and Billyray Gallegos of Denver won the MSPT Blackhawk for more than $100,000. His story was very cute. He said he's been, pursuing professional poker for about 2 years, and but he really, on his Hendon he only had something like $7K in tournament earnings, but he said he's mostly been playing cash, quit his job, was pursuing poker more professionally, and he just felt this was his one. He was ready for it. He dressed up for the occasion. He said he normally wears a sweatshirt and hoodie and all this, but he dressed up because he just knew this one was his, which I also love. I did get some feedback from my boss a couple days ago that maybe I should stop wearing shirts that have holes in them as like a fashion choice if I want to be on camera. So I had to, remind myself that, you have to dress for success and you should, dress for the job you want. So if I don't want to be a homeless person, I guess I will start wearing shirts that are not ripped right here. But I very much appreciated hearing him, say that he dressed for the occasion. And it's always great to see someone walk home with six figures that, they've worked really hard for.
A couple things I got to say about that. Like, number one, I feel like this is a post-pandemic fashion, right? Like, we've all got to be like, oh wait, I can't wear my pajamas 24 hours a day for the rest of it. That's why I just always go with a Poker News shirt. You can't go wrong.
Classy.
Yeah,
Classic.
Just classy, classic. And a fun story about Billyray Gallegos. So our reporter there for updates was Jeff McMillan, and Jeff did a great job, and he tweeted after the event, I'm reading it right now, literally the first player I interacted with on day 1A when I was going around in level 1, and he offered me a cinnamon roll. Then he ships it. Karma for being nice to live reporters. So that was Billyray Gallegos offering up a cinnamon roll, getting $104,000. Just a good story coming out of the MSPT Bally's Blackhawk.
I love it. And I guess it was 2 years ago now. Wow, no, it was 2019. I went to the MSPT in Blackhawk. I was on my way to Colorado all ready for my baby shower. And it's such a quaint, cool town. The vibe is it's just like beautiful. It's this old, kind of Western town, but redone with all the nice amenities. And it was beautiful. The people there were beautiful. The staff was fantastic. And I definitely hope to return to Blackhawk to play some poker at some point. And finally, Chad, the story we know that I've been waiting for the whole podcast. So everyone knows that I am deep, deep into the Dateline murder mystery scene. And to be quite honest with you, I have not gotten my share in a long time. I'm barely finishing like one murder book a month. I'm barely getting a podcast, in here and there if I'm lucky. So basically staying up to date.
Hold on. Sarah, I just got to tell you, because you mentioned Dateline and you murder and all that. So I'm going to recommend this to you and all the listeners.
Yeah.
Dateline just did an episode a couple weeks ago. I watched it. It was great revisiting the murder of Ted Binion, the son of Benny Binion, the founder of the World Series of Poker. This is a murder that was highlighted in Jim McManus's classic poker book, Positively Fifth Street. It's intrigue. There's, his girlfriend. Is she a stripper? Did they murder him to steal his silver that was buried in an underground vault in Pahrump? And there's just many layers to it. It's very fascinating. If you have the Peacock Network or a way to watch Dateline, fire it up. It's like an hour and 15 minutes long. Really good. It gives you the background in the story and then also gives you an update about where some of these people are nowadays. For any poker fan, any fan of the World Series of Poker, any true crime enthusiast like me and Sarah, definitely check it out. Sorry, that was just when you said Dateline, I'm like, I got to tell Sarah about that. I might as well tell the listeners too.
There's a whole other book too. I listened to an audiobook about this murder where there's like a cursory, like the mention even of Binion's as a whole was like just like kind of like a sideline story, just a kid with money basically. For those of us who know a little bit about poker and the history, it's obviously a huge part of the backstory. But honestly, what's interesting about this story we're going to talk about, Susie Zhao, is it doesn't really particularly seem to pertain that much to poker itself anyways, or doesn't seem to 100% like relate to poker. That being said, Susie was a member of the poker community. She was someone people knew as a poker player. And so far, it just feels like it's, we're just getting pushed. We're never getting into the actual trial phase. But Chad, since you are our resident legal counsel here at PokerNews, maybe you can explain a little bit better what's going on.
Yeah, definitely not legal counsel. 1 year of law school under my belt. Let me just throw out, before we get into the nuts and bolts of this case, a little trigger warning, if you will. This is pretty brutal case. The details surrounding it involve sexual assault and murder and some graphicness. So if that's not your sort of thing, or you might be triggered by that, you might not want to hear the rest of this, but let's get into it. So the murder of Susie Zhao, it took place in 2020, back in July. So this was during kind of the height of the pandemic, right? Most things were shut down. We didn't know when they were coming back. She found herself back in Michigan, which is where she was originally from. A lot of people knew her from the LA poker scene. She had played at like Live at the Bike. She made some deep runs in the WSOP main event. Like you said, sir, she was known in the poker world. She was a good poker player and, by all accounts, won some big pots or what have you. Finds herself back in Michigan, and they find a body in like a state park, a state recreation area, badly burned, partially mutilated. This was on July 13th. And ultimately, they arrested and charged one Jeffrey Maurice, a 61-year-old out of Pontiac, Michigan, with the murder. So he is currently awaiting trial. Like you said, Sarah, it's getting postponed for a number of different reasons, which I'll explain here in just a moment. But basically, it's alleged that these two met at a hotel, that they participated in whatever two consulting adults do, but he ultimately ended up assaulting her and murdering her and burning her body. And it's quite horrific. You can read more about it on PokerNews. We have a breakdown that catches you up on everything that's happened and where things stand today. And basically where things stand today is there's just been a bunch of delays, a bunch of legal counsel changing hands and who's defending Maurice. But ultimately, there's a pretrial hearing scheduled for February 17th with a trial date set for June 16th. This is a well-known case in Michigan. A lot of local media outlets are covering it, so PokerNews is also going to be keeping an eye on it. Look, innocent until proven guilty, but the evidence in this case seems pretty straightforward. I would be surprised if there was anything but a conviction and hopefully some justice for Susie Zhao, SusieQ, as she was known to poker fans.
That's right. We will definitely keep up with this story as we have. And yeah, I think I've had this experience also in my own litigious life as of late. The coronavirus has slowed things down to a glacial pace in a industry that is kind of notoriously slow to begin with. So things are just, if it traditionally takes a year, probably expect it to take 3.
Which is just crazy. Like, I was thinking about this in the context of like the stress that a legal proceeding puts on somebody's life, right? And then the slow process of it, and then you have to deal with that for years and years, and yeah, that's just got to be not fun. And that's why I always try not to get sued, because I don't want to deal with that bullshit. Like, I don't want to, go through all that jazz.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. It's a nightmare, but the show must go on, and hopefully, I can't even. The legal community, God bless them. I don't know any lawyers that are happy. So I'm glad, Chad, that you made the move into. I do know a lot of lawyers that are rich, though, so there's that. But I don't know any that are happy, and I'm glad you made the movement into the poker space, because I, in general, think you're just a happy person and you belong here with us in this industry. Now, you guys, next week we will be launching the official Poker News Podcast 2.0. I think we will be streaming it on Wednesdays at noon Central. It's my guess. That's what I'm going with. But of course, if you follow us on all of our socials, we will let you know. You can follow at Poker News, at Auntie Chardonnay, at Chad A. Holloway. And please, hit that sub button. We will let you know every time an episode goes up or when we're planning on going live. Review, all of those things, especially if you like us. If you don't like it, maybe just stop listening, probably, instead of leaving a nasty review, but up to you.
I got one little plug, Sarah, plug for myself.
Yeah.
I did venture out into the poker world from law school, and I actually ventured out into another poker podcast recently. I was asked to be a guest on a show that I know you have been a guest on in the past, Chasing Poker Greatness with Brad Wilson. And so I was just informed that episode will be coming out next week. So if you want to hear more from me, we really get into, my poker origin story, how I got into the game, why and how I left law school, and just talked a lot about the industry as a whole. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy what Brad Wilson's doing. So check out the Chasing Poker Greatness, especially my episode coming out next week.
I also really love him and always find the conversations very genuine and interesting. And in fact, I voted for his podcast in the podcast category of the Global Poker Awards, because I think it's really original and interesting. And it's, as we know, takes a lot of work, and he's putting a lot of work into it. So, well, we appreciate you guys. Of course, we also want to thanks again to our sponsors, PokerStars, Natural 8, GG Poker. You guys are awesome. Thanks for helping us keep this thing going, and we will catch you guys next week. Deuces. If you did enjoy this video and would like to see more of this type of content, please consider subscribing. For the best poker updates, strategy, and analysis, visit PokerNews.com.